So what does all of that mean in terms of an actual race? Sounds good, but what does it mean? Okay, I'll talk to you about it from an actual execution standpoint. Okay, so in the swim, I don't counsel you, don't worry about splits. People go out and they count, well, I do flip turns. You know, well, I don't do flip turns. Well, I wear a wetsuit. Mine doesn't have any sleeves. Well, mine does. And they got fancy formulas about what all of that means in terms of swim time. Your swim on race day, you swim only as fast as you can maintain your form. And that's it. Don't worry about time. You see people get out of the swim and they go, oh. When they come out and they go, oh my God, you know, whoa, you know. Could you have swum faster if I like dropped on a bungee line out of a helicopter and said, you're kind of sandbagging right now. Can you swim faster? No, you can't do that at all, right? You swim as well as you can maintain your form. For me, that's doing 4-count breathing. For me, my swimming 4-count breathing. That's my cue. Once I start going 3-count or 2-count, I know I'm in trouble. Like I'm working too hard, I need to back off and slow myself down. So you have your own personal cue for what relaxed, smooth swimming is. That's what you need to do on race day because that's what you've trained all year long, right? Okay. On the bike, what it becomes is you're going to break your bike down depending on the length of your race. The idea is the beginning part of your bike, in an Ironman, the first 2 hours, for example, a half Ironman first hour, is all about being smooth and steady and starting your nutrition plan. Okay, you actually need to eat. Your fueling on the bike is what sets up your run. By the time you start eating on the run, it's not really going to hit your gut in time to make any difference. So set yourself up well on the bike by going very easy. And so you go easy. We call it JRA, or just riding around. If you're doing an Ironman, your first hour and a half to 2 hours is what you would do if I was like, hey man, let's go for a ride. And you're like, okay. And we talk about our families all the time. That's great. We'll go out and ride. How's work? Good. You go out and you ride easy. Okay? Once you get through your easy part, you bump it up to riding steady. Okay? And then at the very end of your bike ride, depending on how you feel, what the course is like, you can maybe be a little aggressive in terms of coming into T2. But that's generally it. You start off easy. You let everyone else go flying by you out of transition because it doesn't matter. You're not competing against them. Let them go because 90% of them are going to come back to you on their own later on in the day. And that holds true for longer in the race. So you go easy to steady on the bike and be smart. There's really no context in a triathlon where you should be trying to hammer a hill on a bike. Like it sounds great, but the reason why there's 10 gears on the back is so you can use them all. It's amazing to me how few triathletes shift their gears or know how to shift their gears. Or that people just get tired and they're like, you know, those aero bar shifters sounded like a good idea and I spent an extra $500 on them, but I can't be bothered to move my hand from here all the way up to there to shift. I'm just going to pedal a little bit harder or I'll stand up. You know, in a triathlon, really don't want to be getting out of your saddle to pedal up a hill. If you can shift all the way back, be smart. Those of you who use a power meter, you see the real-time application of your effort. You can understand right away the true cost of that hill. You need to back off that effort and be smart on the other side of the hill. And I can answer questions about hills and stuff later. But anyway, bike, easy to steady, and if at the very end you feel good, you can pick it up a little bit. But that's really it. And on the run, very similar pacing. Very smart out. In an Ironman, we say, if you have a goal pace for your run, it should be your steady, easy, long run pace, okay? The first 6 miles, add 30 seconds per mile to that pace. 30 seconds for 6 miles is just 3 minutes. But if you can give me 30 seconds per mile on your steady, easy pace at the beginning of an Ironman, I can almost guarantee you're gonna have a great run, okay? Now what happens is everybody comes out of transition and they're running faster than they could have ever imagined. They're totally amped up. They gave their bike away, never want to see it again. Thank you very much. And they start running out of transition. The crowd's there screaming. You're all excited. You're trying to get your fuel belt on or you're trying to start your watch, whatever it is, and you go flying out of transition. Before you know it, you hit halfway and you're 4 minutes, 5 minutes ahead of schedule. That's a really tough place to be. You never get that time back in a race. You never get it back in a half Ironman. You're probably not going to get it back in an Olympic. Since we know pretty much that everyone else out there is going to be slowing down over the course of their day, if you are speeding up over the course of your day, at some point in time you will intersect and you will pass them and have a better race, okay? So your goal on race day is to run easy for those first few miles, steady for the body of your race, and then when you hit the line, that's where you say, hey, who's around me? Oh, these people have all earned the right to race with me right now, and I am now going to begin racing. But until that point in time, it doesn't matter. Those of you who've been in a race like an Ironman or half Ironman, you've seen that line of bikers and someone goes by on the left and everybody does the, look at the calf, look at the calf. Look at the calf, right? Like, how old is that guy? I wonder how old that guy is. You know, is that a guy? I don't know if that's a guy. Everyone's got shaved legs. Sometimes you don't know. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where they are. All that matters is how fast you're going and what you're eating and how you're feeling. You need to be managing those race day details. Problems don't necessarily fix themselves. So I'll stop there. I probably have about 10 minutes left. And I could just, since I sit at my dining room table and talk all the time on my computer screen, I could just keep going. But I would love to answer your questions as well, so please.
How did you finish that race?
Which one?
Well, the second one. You're like, oh, I was 28th last year.
Oh, how did I finish that race? Well, the pros showed up in the second year, so I wasn't as fast. I was 46th or something like that. I was a little bit faster. That was my best time ever that year. But it was a really powerful exercise for me to sort of to realize, and I think for other people to know as well, that it doesn't matter where you are, what you think your fitness is, we all race the same, right? People say, wow, you know, Michael Lovato is so fast, or Chrissy Wellington is so fast. If you look at how they actually execute their day, it's not like they're going out there and they're riding in zone 5. And their aerobic fitness and their strength and their body composition and their technique and their equipment is such that they're able to be so much faster on race day, but they still pretty much execute the same way. And you read all those stories all the time. You know, so-and-so drops their bottle. They forgot the nutrition and they blew up. Chrissy Wellington didn't have a CO2 cartridge. You know, for me, I'm like, this is the one day of your job that really matters, and you showed up like without pants or without a belt or something, you know, like, oh my God, this is it. You know, but even professional athletes make crazy mistakes, and you don't, just because you're not an advanced athlete doesn't mean you can't race like a professional. That's one of my biggest things for the team and for everyone else is you can be a beginner triathlete and still race like a pro, and you can be a lot faster than, don't make the 3 or 4 years of mistakes that everyone else made, getting it all wrong and then figuring it all out. You can do a much better job out of the gate. Thank you. Please.
Lake Placid, what's your one best tip, and how do you rate the course as far as difficulty versus other Ironman?
Okay, what's my best tip for Lake Placid, and how do I rate that course? I'll start with the second part first. Lake Placid, I would have put at the second hardest Ironman course until they unveiled St. George this year, which I think is now the number 1. Number 2 would be Ironman Wisconsin, because you're all over, up, down, left, right. You never get a chance to take a break. Placid is hard from an elevation standpoint, but it's actually pretty easy. I call it set it and forget it. You're going out of town, you're going up for about 6 miles, then you're going down for about 6 miles, then you're flat for 12 miles, then you're kind of up for about 4 miles. So you can kind of say, I'm climbing for 4 miles. I'm in climbing mode. I'm descending for 6 miles. I'm descending. Very easy to manage. So at the end of the day, it's a challenging course, but if you're a smart athlete, you can actually have a pretty good race there. The run is tough, but I like the run because it's just different enough that it sort of challenges you. Running through town is tough. That climb into town is off the charts tough. In terms of the one tip that I would have for it, I like to think about really the bike. Swim is the swim. It's a beautiful swim. It should be your fastest Ironman swim anywhere because it's a lake, it's tiny, and there's no wind. Mirror lake, they call it that for a reason. The bike, I think about the last 20 miles from the end of the out and back, when you flip it and you go back into town. That's all that matters. Until that point in time, you just have to go easy. There's so many little hills and rollers around town. Just be smart. If you don't have a power meter, and this is something for everybody, use your aero bars as a governor on race day. If you stay in your aero bars, assuming that you're comfortable and you can stay in your aero bars, you really can't overachieve and work too hard if you're locked in the aero position. You just can't crank on those pedals too much. You can't do too much damage to yourself. So if you stay in those bars, you have to start shifting, get to cadence up so you can get over that hill, and that becomes your sort of unofficial power meter, pace guidance. Make sure that you're good at the end of the day. And I really encourage you to try these tips. Like, just take a race. I know it's hard to be like, man, I trained all this time. Go out and do it in a training ride or do it in a race simulation. Actually try and see what it's like to go easy in the beginning of your ride and then go steady at the end. You'll be like, wow, it was only 4 minutes slower. You know, and it's like, sure would be nice not to walk 6 miles at the end of my race. Like, that might work out. So, okay, there was a question over here before in the back. Warming up on race day, what's the distance of the race? A half. So, in general, a race like a half or an Ironman, the warm-up is really not that important because your race is so long. And I really consider the swim to be part of that warm-up. So, what I usually recommend people is get your wetsuit on, say goodbye to your family, whatever you're gonna do. Just get a couple strokes in, 5, 8 minutes swimming, maybe some 30-second kind of bursts, and you're good. If you're doing a sprint or an Olympic and you have high expectations for yourself, then the shorter your race is, the longer the warm-up needs to be. So I take a little run before I hit transition. Just don't get too sweaty, because trying to put on your wetsuit when you're hot is a very bad idea. Those of you who've done that. So in general, just a light warm-up. But for the most times, I'm usually late. So I get in a transition. I'm usually that last guy who's running to the starting line. That's my warm-up. And the swim really is your warm-up. Like it's another way to sort of say, hey, I'm really not going to try and kill it out of the gate when the gun goes off. I'm just going to be smart. So, any other questions, please? A run-walk plan? That's a great question. Inside Endurance Nation, we recommend that all of our athletes in an Ironman or half Ironman that you walk the aid stations. People talk about run walk now like it's a brand new, like, whoa, what's this Galloway method and Ironman and what am I doing? It's not necessarily rocket science. You need to be able to get food and fuel in, and so we tell people to learn to walk the aid stations. You don't need to train that way, like training to walk. It's actually easier than just running steady. What you need to do is train your body to actually consume and understand what calories you need to take in at that point in time. But in general, if you're in an Ironman, you've got an aid station every mile. If you're in a half Ironman, it could be every 1.5 to 2 miles. Each race is a little bit different. But by all means, walk the aid stations to get in the nutrition that you need. We tell people 30 steps. So you run to the aid station, the part that you need, and you take 30 steps, count them so you get going again, which is not important early in the day, but later on you need a line where you say, now I start running again, otherwise you'll just keep walking. Or you start walking at the beginning of the aid station, and who knew aid stations could be like 5 minutes long. I did that one year in Kona. I went back and was like, wow, I ran so fast, but I walked so slow through all the aid stations that I was slower. I ran faster, but I was slower overall because I was taking all this time at the aid stations. So you can be focused just by managing that as well. So absolutely run walk, totally a viable method of pacing yourself. Your goal on the run is to keep the calories coming in and to be as steady as you can for as long as you can. Walking for 30 steps or a minute at an aid station helps keep that heart rate down over the long term. Once that heart rate goes up, you never get it back as long as you keep moving. The only way to get it back is to stand down, which sometimes your body makes you do on race day. You just have to stop and go to the bushes or something like that. So he's got a microphone for you, I think.
I just have a question with respect. How do you use your power meter during the races?
Okay, that's a great question. Power meter is sort of a relatively new device for the triathlon market. We call the power meter. If you go to our website, there's like a whole ebook series you can download on using a power meter with guidance and zones and everything. But we use that power meter as a governor, essentially. So inside Endurance Nation, you would do tests, so we understand what your threshold power is, and you're given specific zones that you would hold on race day. So I can tell you day one of your training what you're going to be doing on race day because you have a power meter with those numbers. Game over, done. What it allows you to do is really eliminate all that other noise because you have a fixed number to focus on. If you just have a regular bike computer, you're looking at miles per hour, you're trying to figure out maybe it's a downhill, maybe it's a headwind, it's a cross, a tail, you've got a disc on, never had a disc on before, trying to do math, you don't know. But 200 watts here today on a trainer is 200 watts, Kona on a hill, it's 200 watts everywhere. So it really equals everything out. So the power meter then becomes a function of, we give you 4 zones. There's your warm-up zone, which is that first 1.5 to 2 hours in an Ironman, for example. There's your steady zone, which is what you hold for the bulk of your race. There's your long hill zone, which you'd hold for 3 minutes or more on a climb. And there's your short hill zone, which you can exceed for just a minute or two, very short stuff. And so when you're riding and you're like, I'm on a long hill, I want to see 240 watts. Or it's a flat or a downhill, I want to sit on 200. What that allows you to do is it really takes, it's like driving a Prius. Who here has a Prius or has driven a Prius before? Anybody? Come on, it's got to be some people. So you totally have the miles per gallon metric, right? So you don't care about speed anymore. It becomes a competition. Who can have the best mileage to grandma's house as you're driving? My wife and I do that all the time. And a power meter lets you do that because you're riding a hill, and without a power meter, you say, I'm riding 18 miles an hour. I'm an 18 mile an hour guy, and I don't care who put this hill in my way. I like 18 miles an hour. I'm just going to ride over this thing like 18 miles an hour. Well, with a power meter, you're like, oh my God, I'm now riding. Lance Armstrong puts these numbers out, I think, that I'm riding right now in the middle of my race. He doesn't run after, but I have to attempt to run. So the power meter, you sit on those watts, and what happens is your speed drops. So a power meter, you sit at 200 watts. So you're riding at 20 miles an hour down a hill, but you're riding at 5 miles an hour up a hill. So your speed goes all over the place, but your effort and your heart rate and what you're able to consume calorically stays the same. A very happy place to be. And so on a hill, for example, if you're riding power, the heart rate athlete goes shooting by you until about halfway up the hill. All of a sudden, they kind of pop. Then they start going, they see the language they start going like this. They're looking for gears, and you're just riding steady. You end up sitting steady behind them. They get to the top of the hill, and they have to shut it down. Their heart rate's off the charts, they're breathing heavy, and you're just riding steady, and you just hold that steady pace right over the top of the hill, and you go flying by them on the other side. You haven't worked a lick harder. They just went way hard at the outset, didn't get the feedback from their heart until later in the climb that it was too hard, and they paid the price for it. And they do that 20 or 30 times over the course of a half Ironman or an Ironman, and you just stay steady, and after about 2/3 of the race, you just never see them again. They're just gone. So you use that power meter as a governor. All right, and yes?
Instead of a power meter, can you just use your heart rate monitor, or what would be the difference?
Sure, yeah, you can use your heart rate monitor, absolutely. I'm not trying to say heart rate monitors are bad. The challenge of heart rate power meters are instant feedback. You can see right away. Heart rate monitor, you don't get that feedback for 30 seconds to 45 seconds or a minute. So you have to be really on top of your game to know that, wow, I could really exceed what I'm doing here on this hill. So heart rate becomes important later on in the race for sure, as you start saying, typically on a 40-mile ride or a 25-mile ride, I sit on 145 beats per minute. But today I'm riding and it's 155. Like, whoa, like these numbers are really different. How do I want to adjust my pacing early on? So the challenge early on with a heart rate monitor is just that you're tapered, you're rested, it's early on. You're not going to see numbers that you're typically used to seeing. It's got to kind of correlate itself. As you get more experience, you'll do a better job of managing that for sure. So in general, I tell people if you're going to be in the game for a while and you're going to do longer races, don't buy that new bike that you think you need to buy. Just go buy a power meter and make your old bike and you a lot faster. It's a way better investment down the line. So I think I've used all my time. Am I good? Or oh, I got more time. All right. More questions, please. These are good questions. And the way in the back. Yes. You need a microphone for sure. Sorry.
Guidelines for Ironman Kentucky?
Ironman Kentucky. Well, it wasn't hot last year, but it can be wicked hot. As we actually have, you should go down to our booth because there's a woman who flew in from Kentucky for the event today, and she baked some awesome biscotti, which is not related to Ironman, but I'm going to eat it all unless someone else shows up. So free shirts and biscotti, the Endurance Nation booth. Not going to find that anywhere. So Ironman Louisville, swim obviously is totally unique, time trial start. Off the charts crazy, no wetsuit. You just go out and get it done. The swim is just so atypical, upstream and then downstream. And the net is you end up where you should be, but in the process of it, you feel totally out of it and you don't know what's going on. The earlier you go, the cleaner your race is. So if you show up, like literally the line starts, it's like a rock concert. The line starts at like 5:30 in the morning. So if you're there early, you'll be at the front of the line. You get to go early. If you show up late, like I typically do, then there's 2,000 people in front of you. But it's not 2,000 people like this where you can easily get ahead. It's 2,000 people in front of you like that, like you're waiting at a toll booth, and you got to go around all of them. So early on the swim, on the bike, there's nothing flat in Louisville whatsoever. It's all rollers. So you really need to be smart about your pacing. If you go to our website, we've got like a course talk. We do course talks for all the races. There's 30 minutes about Ironman Louisville and all the Ironman races, just from an overview perspective. And you'll get some feedback on sort of what to do. But in general, you go out, you ride out of town, you do 2 loops, and then you're coming back in. You really need to be smart on that first loop. The rest of the way, the last trip into town is mostly downhill, but there's typically a headwind. And the run, sorry to take everyone's time, the run is hard because no joke, just run like 6.55 miles from here that way and then come back. Almost every other Ironman course is some kind of a loop or you're winding of some kind. And in Louisville, you literally run, you go through like 8, it's like the Boston Marathon. You go through like 7 different neighborhoods. And by the time you get to the end, it looks like a local 5K. That you're like, there's you and 3 other people, wherever you are in the race. And you're like, where's the rest of the race? There's like a kid with a lemonade stand. You're like, are you part of the race? Where am I? But the finish line is off the charts amazing. Down in 4th Street Live, for sure. So very challenging race. Be ready for the heat. Okay, I got 1 more minute. Please. Oh, you got a microphone.
So if we have a power meter and a training wheel to train with, but not in a race wheel, is it better to try to use other data for racing and use a race wheel that's faster, or to use a heavier training wheel?
Okay, that's a great question. If you have a power meter and a training wheel, but it's not a race wheel, what do? You can buy, if you're comfortable riding a disc, you can get a wheel cover. Usually you can get a wheel cover for your wheel, depending on the type of wheel that you have. It's about $90 to $100 depending, which is just a plastic cover to your wheel, which is just as good as using a disc wheel on race day. But you can also rent race wheels online. I've rented all my race wheels, and they end up being, it's maybe $140 or something like that for a week, which is a very minimal investment to know exactly what you're doing on race day. There's a company called Race Day Wheels, and probably your local shop has an option for you as well. But literally having a power meter on race day, the longer your race is, it's like cheating. You know, it's like you get to see, it's like having a Google map, and I get to see what's going on inside your house because I've got the super zoom function, and everybody else has just left. Like they've all got to go to the same party, but all they can see is the entire city of Boston. Like I'm going to get there faster, I'm going to be on time, I'm going to know exactly what I need to do. And on race day, just having that information is huge. You can't underestimate, especially for those longer races. It's game over. So.
And one more question for Ken.
And I'll be down at the booth all day with my biscotti. Please come down, free t-shirts, everything. And you all have a DVD in your bag from us as well, so you can check that out. So any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you guys, thank you very much.